It may seem obvious for some of you how philosophy can help your writing, especially if you're someone who is engaged with lots of the available material out there, but today I want to expand a very important point that you can learn that will help you write a more coherent, logical, and streamlined story. At its most fundamental, philosophy is concerned with understanding the world around us. Not just the material world, which is mostly the purview of science, but the world of ideas, concepts, meaning, existence, and everything else that we can't quite figure out. Philosophy cares about the big questions that don't necessarily have measurable answers. We could spend a long time listing the questions that philosophy has attempted to answer over the last few thousand years, but that isn't the point of this video. The point of this video is to tell you one very important way that philosophy will help your book and almost every aspect of it. Essentially, philosophy is all about perceptions, the various ways we see and explain our world. It's quite remarkable as you dive deeper into philosophy across time, some of the crucial things philosophers got right in ancient Greece and some of the things they got wrong. What's more interesting for us, though, is how two people can view and explain the same phenomenon or event in completely contradictory ways. How people can perceive the world acting in one way while another person sees it in the opposite. We can also see similarities in thoughts from people who have lived very different lives and existences but still arrived at very similar conclusions. For writers like us, this presents a very useful treasure trove of inspiration. We can see how people can be convinced of an idea, even if we now understand that it's wrong or immoral by our modern standards. Philosophy provides you with a wealth of examples of people seeing things differently, and therefore acting very differently in the world as a result. This gives us a great foundation for building tension and conflict within a story, as well as understanding the appropriate paths to redemption, or the particular philosophies that could persuade them to believe something else. We can do this because almost every philosophical text is persuasive by nature, and written in such a way as to make a certain worldview, moral, position, or ethical standpoint seem correct. Their language is deliberate and calculated, their evidence is choice and pertinent, and their arguments are strong and compelling. This allows us to craft characters who have very different takes on a situation depending on their philosophical perspective, and sets up the dynamic that can make a story truly great. Whenever we are dealing with a moral, ethical, or emotional issue, there is some element of philosophy that has given birth to it. Why some actions are acceptable to people who see the world a certain way, and why they're not to others. The trolley car is a very famous example of a philosophical predicament that I'm sure you're well aware of. Plato, Kant, Wollstonecraft, Nietzsche, Weil, de Beauvoir, Camus, and the Buddha would all have varying approaches and answers to what they think the best solution would be, based on their various philosophical perspectives. Even acts that we consider to be simple, like lying, for example, have plagued philosophers as to their moral implications, and learning about ways that people can view actions differently can allow you to set up situations more realistically. But importantly, have the outcomes and character interactions be more diverse and nuanced. You can craft more complex characters and relationships. For example, two actors may seem like the best of friends based on their backgrounds, but disagree deeply over how to handle a situation ethically. The opposite may be true when people from two different corners of the world find companionship in somebody who shares their meaning of living a good life. Not only does embracing philosophy make your characters more nuanced in their perspective, removing your temptation to self-insert or dictate to your audience, but it can also help you understand the importance of each individual word that you're using. Are you really communicating clearly what is going on? I mean, really making it clear with thought and effort. This is what philosophers do, and what's more, philosophers are often fantastic at how they use analogies to help express their points, which can mean if you're trying to include a theme or a message in your story, you can see how the greats have done so. Plato had his cave, Aesop had his fables, Kant had his island of truth, Camus used Sisyphus, Murdoch had her Black Prince, and Ardent's work is awash with allegories. We've talked before about being careful with allegories, but if you are intending to write something allegorical, then philosophers really are the experts that we can learn a lot from to explain a perspective or concept. This may all sound a little bit overwhelming, pretentious, and a lot of hard work for marginal gains in the areas of nuance and clarity, but at the end of the day, this is a competitive industry, where fractional percentages can make every difference. Your book is unlikely to be criticized for having more philosophical depth than less. Can you afford to take the chance of not having more fundamental underpinnings in your story from people who dedicated their lives to answering those questions? That's up to you.